11 a.m. I am joined by my esteemed colleagues, Councilmember Paul Krikorian. Morning, Paul. And Councilmember Marquise Harris-Dawson. Good morning, my brother. So we've called this meeting to order. I want to welcome you during this most challenging time of our city and our nation and, of course, the world.
This call is now being recorded.
Reserve my comments, but I wish everybody well, that we move forward. We have challenges in front of us, and so let me begin by receiving the comments of our community, what we call public comment. And Mr. Kubaton will manage the public comments for us telephonically on Zoom. You have 1 minute for an individual item and 2 minutes for multiple items.
I'm sorry, Mr. Chair. Call the roll.
Yes. Cedillo present.
Krikorian.
Here.
Harris-Dawson.
Here.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. So let's hear from public comment.
So we're now going to open the public comment. I have our first speaker on the line. Would you please state your name, which item you'd like to comment on?
Your notepad.
Hello?
Hello? Yes, our first speaker, please state your name and what item you'd like to comment on, please.
Hello?
Yes, would you please state your name and which item you would like to comment on?
My apologies. My name is Diane Robertson, and I'm commenting on item 13.
Okay, thank you. You have 1 minute, so please proceed.
Good morning, council members. My name is Diane Robertson, and I'm a founding member of the Coalition of Small Rental Property Owners, a new grassroots group advocating for the rights of mom and pop owners. I'm calling in support of item 13, the COVID-19 Mom and Pop Mortgage Assistance Program. Without direct financial assistance during this pandemic, our lives are at risk. Foreclosure is a real possibility in the not-so-distant future, and ultimately, when corporations buy up the foreclosed properties, the safe housing our tenants currently enjoy will be lost as well. The fact is, mom and pop owners have financial obligations just like our tenants. Most of us rely on rental income to pay mortgages, taxes, insurance, maintenance, and utilities. We are natural, affordable housing providers who often choose to not increase rent for years in order to keep good tenants in their units, tenants who might otherwise not be able to afford to stay, and long-term tenants stabilize communities. For many of us, losing our properties will strip us of current income as well as planned retirement income. Moreover, in the African-American community of which I'm a part, real estate ownership is often one of the greatest opportunities to create financial security and generational wealth. All of this is at risk now if we are forced to house our tenants for free without receiving any relief. With that said, yes, I'm extremely hopeful. This motion represents a commitment to finding solutions that support the entire housing community. Thank you for the opportunity to comment, and I wish you all a great and safe day.
Thank you. Thank you, Speaker. We have our next speaker.
Good morning, Council.
Please state your name and which item you would like to speak on.
Yes, my name is Tammy Mason, and I would like to comment in support of item 13. I reside in and have a single-family rental in the Council Districts 10 and 8. As a member of the Coalition of Small Rental Property Owners, I am commenting on support of this item. COVID-19 has directly impacted me as a rental property owner, and I'm extremely concerned about retaining my property. I have not received rental payment since March. I've made numerous attempts to the tenants to understand their financial circumstances, and all attempts and communication has been rejected. I have not raised the rent in over 2 years while also covering the utilities. This property is on a 6,000 square foot lot and is in on a street with very few single-family homes. Investors have infiltrated this neighborhood and converted many single-family homes to multiplexes as well as apartments. On October 1st, I will no longer be able to pay for the rent, the mortgage, as well as the additional expenses, and I am hopeful small rental property owners like myself will receive some type of relief and support. Thank you for your time and the opportunity to comment.
Thank you, Speaker. Our next speaker, please state your name and which item you'd like to comment on. Hello, our next speaker, please state your name and which item you'd like to comment on.
Hello, are you able to hear me?
Yes, please state your name and which item you would like to comment on.
Yes, my name is Brandon.
Please hold.
Item 13.
Gerald, sorry, Speaker. We need to rejoin the meeting.
Okay. Yes, my name is Brandon. Oh, should I go now?
Yes, please.
Okay, hi. So Brandon, speaking in favor of item 13, I just want to speak to the false assumption that landlords are wealthy, which is not true. I lease a townhome condo in the San Fernando Valley in the city of LA. My tenants have lost their jobs, so I've been working with them and paying the mortgage out of my own savings. But unfortunately, my savings is running out. My wife's job is in question, so I too am on the verge of homelessness and on the verge of foreclosure. I'm writing to support this initiative because I do believe it will help tenants stay in property. I want to keep my units affordable, and I want to continue to provide affordable housing to them. And finally, I want to end by sharing a story, which is my own mother's story. She's hoping to retire in the home that I grew up in, which is in Hyde Park near Slauson and Crenshaw. But unfortunately, I've had to tell her not to retire, even though she suffers from health issues. Her hope was to move with her mother in Louisiana and rent out her home to have income, but she does still have a slight mortgage on the property. But since there's zero protections in place and there's no assistance, I unfortunately cannot tell her to take that risk. So I'm hopeful that you will pass this initiative, and with that, I will stop.
Thank you, Speaker. Our next speaker is on the queue. Please state your name and which item you would like to speak on.
Yes, my name is Alex Olson, and I would like to first state my support briefly for two of the motions that we've heard today.
Okay, you have 2 minutes. Thank you.
Certainly, and then also a general public comment. So first, I would like to state my support for the motion to protect mom and pop rental property owners. I believe that they do deserve relief, and that large property management corporations should not have that relief available to them. However, I believe if it is truly a mom and pop situation, then they should certainly be afforded as much aid as the city can provide. Secondly, I would like to state my support for the motion to exempt hotels opening their doors to the homeless population from the conversion and demolition ordinances. That said, now I would like to make the general public comment. First, I'd like to thank the council members present, especially Councilmember Krikorian, for finally sending the message yesterday that you are listening. However, the proposed maximum LAPD budget cuts from the motion are just barely over what they're already set to receive in additional funding, though. So I believe you will understand that this token gesture is not enough. Their budget is apparently nowhere on their website, despite them receiving billions of dollars in taxpayer funds. But here are some general suggestions and specifics on where you could start investigating some cuts. The Deferred Retirement Option Program, or DROP, allows officers of a certain age and seniority to collect both pension and salary simultaneously. Double dipping like that needs to go. There's also $165 million proposed for sworn overtime, $41 million in bonuses simply for having a college degree. LAPD has an incredibly large helicopter fleet, and each helicopter costs about $400 an hour to operate. I would also suggest, most importantly, a total moratorium on all purchases of military and riot control equipment. The gas canisters and rubber bullets they have been firing directly into the faces and bodies of peaceful protesters for days now should be the last they ever use. I'm just one person working with painfully opaque data, but you as our city council can do far better. People of Los Angeles are asking you to represent our interests, and we will be here at every step and every meeting to be sure that you
Thank you, Speaker.
Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you, Speaker.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, I just wanted to point out that as this is a special meeting, general public comment is not on the agenda today, and it's unfortunately inappropriate under the Brown Act to take general public comment about non-agenda items.
You are absolutely correct on that. Let's please keep note of that.
Thank you. Our next speaker, please.
Comment.
Our next speaker, please state your name and which item you would like to speak on.
My name is Gabriela Litov, and my husband also Eli Litov, and I'd like to speak on the items 3 and 4, recommending the extended registry requirements and additional regulations, and also extending provisions to all rentals, rent control provisions to all rentals in the city, including condos and single-family homes.
You have 2 minutes. Thank you. Go ahead. 2 minutes.
Yes. This is, as a housing provider in LA, I'm strongly opposed to these measures, and I believe they're already protected by AB 1482. This item should be delayed for further stakeholder input and not rushed during these emergency conditions. Statewide price gouging and for-cause eviction law is a compromise that has been in effect, which is 1482, for less than a year. The housing report for item 3 was commissioned before this law was implemented, and there is no data regarding the effects of the new state law in the report. Shortly after the release of the report, the crisis that is the COVID-19 pandemic unfolded, which has consumed rental operators with managing emergency measures. There's been no ability to receive stakeholder input during this time, nor has outreach been conducted to rental operators, including those who operate single-family homes or condos. I do operate single-family homes as well as an apartment building. And we have laws that have been implemented, and I reject items 3 and 4 on the agenda. Thank you for listening to me.
Thank you, Speaker. Our next speaker. Our next speaker, please state your name and which item you would like to comment on.
Good morning. This is Danielle Eidner with the Apartment Association of Greater Los Angeles. I would like to speak on items 3, 4, and 13.
You have 2 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you. So AGLA is opposed to items 3 and 4. We urge the committee to table item 3 to allow for comprehensive stakeholder discussion before advancing further. With regard to item 4, we oppose it while we believe that AB 1482 affords localities to implement stricter rent control measures. The state law does not allow for local jurisdictions to institute enforcement mechanisms, rent registries, and associated fees for property owners that are subject to these state law provisions. I would also like to take the opportunity to express our support for item 13. We appreciate the committee's advancement of measures that will provide financial assistance to mom and pop housing providers. Thank you for the opportunity today.
Thank you. speaker. Our next speaker, please.
Hello? Are you hear me?
Yes, please state your name and which item you would like to speak on.
My name is Alina Kutzevo, and I'm strongly opposed number 3 and number 4. I operate a small apartment building and single family, and I'm already received for every tenant a letter which said we cannot pay your rent for at least 6 months upfront. I don't have money to pay without my rent. You know, what I have to do if my tenant cannot pay me 6 months, which I'm already received letter from them. I'm strongly opposed against 3 and 4. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker, please state your name and which item you would like to speak on.
My name is Susan Pfeiffer, and I'm speaking on item 15. I'm president of the Washington Preschool and Child Care Center, Incorporated, founded in 1991 by the late Patricia Griffith, a local champion for working mothers and their children. Our nonprofit provides early learning and care programs year-round and full day for working families of all incomes in Northeast Los Angeles, as well as to the city and federal employees in downtown. On behalf of our board of directors, the past, present, and future families, teachers, staff, and volunteers, we urge the Housing Committee to approve item 15 on the June 4th agenda related to the Mayor's 46th Program Year Consolidated Plan. We operate at La Casita Verde Center at the city-owned Ziegler Estate adjacent to the Southwest Museum Station, designated City Historic Cultural Monument number 416, and also on the National Register of Historic Places. The consolidated plan includes $1.3 or almost $1.4 million in CDBG funds for upgrades to stabilize this property, and the staff have determined that its rehab is a multi-phase project with an additional approximately $4 million included in a future year.
Thank you,
In
Steve.
2002,
Please conclude your comment.
okay, well, I want to thank you for my opportunity to comment, and thank you for listening.
Thank you very much. Our next speaker, please state your name and which item you would like to comment on.
Hi, my name is Peter Horton. I'd like to comment on item 11.
Thank you. You have 1 minute.
Okay. I'm a tenant in Los Angeles. I support this motion to administer the program citywide instead of phasing it in by zip code and to have a sole source contract. I think that this is going to help create stronger defense for tenants. There was a study that came out within the last couple of weeks from UCLA law professor Gary Blasi talking about the massive wave of evictions that are going to come as some of these COVID-19 protections get lifted. And without access to counsel, a lot of tenants are not going to be properly informed of their rights, and they're going to lose their housing while also still struggling to with the unemployment and other destabilizing effects of the pandemic. That's something that the city should use all of its resources to try to avoid.
Thank you, Speaker. Our next speaker, please state your name and which item you would like to comment on.
Hi, this is Armando Flores with the Valley Industry and Commerce Association, VICA, calling on items 3, 4, and 13.
Yes, you have 2 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you. So on item 13, we want to thank the council for introducing this motion, which would provide relief for smaller housing providers. So we appreciate you taking the steps to help renters or renter providers during this economic crisis. On item 3, as other callers have mentioned, the HCID report, which was commissioned prior to the approval and implementation of AB 1482. The report contains no data related to the statewide price gouging for cause eviction law. The report also fails to address long-standing concerns regarding the existing just cause ordinance, which currently governs rent-controlled properties. So we would urge you to delay this. Other groups have not had an opportunity to weigh in on this issue, so we believe that it's inappropriate to adopt or to advance this policy at this time. On item 4, we oppose this item. So while AB 1482 allows local governments to impose rent control, it does not allow local governments to institute enforcement mechanisms, registries, and fees. So we would urge you not to move this item forward. So thank you for your time.
Thank you. Our next speaker, please state your name and which item you would like to comment on.
Elena Pop, Executive Director of the Eviction Defense Network, commenting on 3, 4, 11, and 13. We are in the middle of a health crisis and anticipated a 300 to 600 case strong eviction tsunami, which should have hit us in the first week of April. It did not because of one strong policy change by our state judicial council. The city council can duplicate that dissipation of tsunami 2, which should hit us in the week after day 91, after the governor lifts the state of emergency, by passing strong measures to protect tenants. I support item 11. I support strengthening and bringing in 1482 protections and any other of the renter protection provisions that you are taking into account. I am actually a member of AGLA, and AGLA didn't ask my husband and I what we thought about this. They reached out to us and asked us to come and speak against 2 of these items, but I'm not sure how the membership was polled about this, and both my husband and I are not in favor of what AGLA is proposing in this meeting. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker, please state your name and which item you would like to comment on.
This is Beverly Henworthy, Virginia Apartment Association. I'd like to speak on items 3, 4, and 13.
You have 2 minutes.
Okay, on item 13, we'd like to offer our support, and we thank the council for moving this forward. It's very important, as you've heard from a number of property owners who are in jeopardy of losing their property and destabilizing the housing for their tenants. So we thank you for moving this forward. On items 3 and 4, we feel that there has been, we know there's been no stakeholder engagement in any of these items. The report that came out in item number 3 came out before 1482 was implemented and has not been considered. And also we have some serious concerns about how the city would implement 1482 for item number 4. So we respectfully request that you delay these matters for stakeholder engagement, and we appreciate your consideration. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Our next speaker, please state your name and which item you would like to comment on.
Hi, my name is Scott Davis. I'd like to comment on item 11.
You have 1 minute.
Great. Thank you very much. I would just like to encourage the committee to pass a motion on item 11. I'm really encouraged that you all are taking up the idea of expanding an eviction defense program throughout the city instead of phasing it in by zip code and administering it through a sole source contact. However, I would like to note that passage of this motion without a robust budget allocation will do little. So there needs to be a lot of money put behind this for tenant outreach and education and eviction defense services to prevent potentially hundreds of thousands of evictions anticipated to come down in the next couple months. And additionally, this emergency eviction defense program should just be seen as a first step towards a fully codified right to counsel for tenants facing eviction. So I would encourage the committee to pass and support item 11. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Our next speaker, please state your name and what item you would like to comment on. Please state your name and which item you would like to comment on. Our next speaker, please state your name and what item you would like to comment on.
My name is David Potter, and I'd like to comment on item 3 and 4.
You have 2 minutes.
I encourage you to vote no on agenda item 3 and 4 today. Furthering poorly thought out rent control regulation will negatively impact the housing supply in Los Angeles. These properties and their residents are currently protected by AB 1482. This item should be delayed for further stakeholder input and not rushed during emergency condition. Item number 4 is way too early to make a rush to judgment decision. The eviction law is a compromise that has been in effect for less than a year, and there has been no ability to receive stakeholder input during the time as a result of COVID-19. There has also been no proper outreach to rental operators, including those who operate single-family businesses or condos. This item should be opposed to by the committee, should use this as an opportunity to review long-standing problems with the RSO program. I'm opposed to any further draconian rent control in Los Angeles. The city of Los Angeles has done more to drive a wedge between business owners in Los Angeles and the city government in the last 2 months on regulations that obviously are not working. The city should be helping apartment owners, not hindering them. At a time when the supply of housing in Los Angeles is inadequate, the city is doing an amazing job at deterring any further housing projects. The city needs to step up and work with developers. At a time in Los Angeles where business owners are hiding behind plywood and afraid to come out, business owners are losing their business and being beat to death by looters, while the police stand by and are unable to do their job they're supposed to do. The city needs to stop driving a wedge between small business owners and start helping us. For example, rolling back LA City business license fee, RSO fees, which increased 50% this year, SCEP fee, SCEP inspection, DW fees that constantly increase at a higher rate than 3%. This includes LA-controlled utilities, water, electric, sanitation, the sewer charge, and trash. Local businesses are totally losing faith in the LA City Council. While certain members are being investigated by the FBI, and you guys are tearing down our relationships with our tenants, people we're trying to help and house. It's very unfortunate. I encourage you to vote no on 3 and 4. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker, please state your name and what item you would like to comment on.
Can you hear me?
Yes, please state your name and what item you'd like to comment on.
Thanks. My name is Caitlin Quackenbush. I'm a research associate at SAGE and a member of the Right to Counsel Coalition and a tenant in the city of Los Angeles. I will be speaking on item 11 and then items 3, 4, and 13. In regards to item 11, I support, thank you. In regards to item 11, I support the passage of the motion and call for a robust budget allocation for the tenant outreach and education and eviction defense services in order to prevent the hundreds of thousands of evictions anticipated in the coming months. This program should continue to be seen as a step towards a fully codified right to counsel for tenants facing eviction in the city, and passing this motion today and then committing to robustly funding these services is not only critical in this moment and in the upcoming months, but is part of the investment this city must make to ensure long-term housing security as we anticipate living with COVID-19 and its rippling effects for many months and possibly years to come. In regards to items 3 and 4, the city should adopt universal just cause eviction protections so all tenants have basic protections and can fight arbitrary, discriminatory, or retaliatory evictions. The current proposal does not expand just cause eviction protections to all tenants. It leaves the hundreds of thousands of tenants renting single-family homes potentially unprotected and invites unscrupulous landlords to conceal a property's corporate ownership through layers of LLCs. All renters in LA deserve just cause eviction protections. And finally, in regards to item 13, I urge the Housing Committee to integrate tenant protections in terms that would require first right to purchase for any properties that receive mortgage assistance through this fund. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Our next speaker, please state your name and what item you'd like to comment on.
Hi, this is Lori Gay. I'm President and CEO of Neighborhood Housing Services of LA County. and a member of the Healthy LA Coalition. I want to speak in support of item number 13.
Thank you. You have 1 minute.
Thank you. We want to encourage, certainly, your support here, but a number of questions come up for us, particularly with the expedited timeline to implement the program. And we'd like to see more detail and specifics on it. Does it expand upon the $1,000 a month for tenants up to the 3 months to really help landlords? How will landlords be qualified and evaluated? What's the intake process, right? Does the program include financial counseling as a requirement for landlords by HUD-approved housing counseling agencies? What are some of the recommended dollar amounts in terms of the programming so those of us who do outreach have a sense of how far the funds will go? And last but not least, we want to recommend that the committee consider establishing a period of tenant protection that extends beyond the subsidy period, that will restrict retaliation against tenants or reporting of tenants to debt collection and other forms of harassment that may arise, as well as add what we call deed restrictions to any kind of assistance that's provided to the landlord directly if eligible, so that properties are not able to be sold off with the city's funding, and that the owner has provided
your comment.
Thank you. The owner has provided an opportunity to purchase to tenants and or a community land trust or qualified mission-driven housing organization. Thanks very much for your support and commitment.
Our next speaker, please state your name and what item you would like to comment on. Please state your name. Go ahead.
Oh, okay. So it's me. My name is Kimako Desbeen, and I'm a mom and pop owner, and I would like to speak on number 3, number 4, number 13.
You have 2 minutes.
I strongly oppose number 3 and number 14. One, the stakeholders have not been engaged for this, and I would like to ask that it be delayed, and really do not want it to be expanded. I really feel there's no protections for the landlords that have been noted. Even at times in just cause evictions, tenants are still not being evicted, which has been my experience, personal experience. And number 13, I support it, and I truly thank you guys for bringing to the table help for mom and pop landlords to maintain some type of financial system to help us pay our rent as our tenants are not able to pay our mortgage as our tenants are not able to pay their rent. Thank you.
Thank you, Speaker. Our next speaker, please state your name and what item you would like to comment on. Please state your name. Our next speaker, please state your name and what item you'd like to comment on.
My name is Brenda Brams, and I'd like to comment on items 3 and 4 and urge you to oppose them. I don't think that they have been studied enough, and I think they could have adverse effects on mom and pop landlords. I urge you to think before you enact this and wait to hear from stakeholders. I find the cynical attempt to take over properties from mom and pop landlords who may default terrible, and I think that happens in fascist countries, not in the United States of America. And I know about fascist countries. I was born in a displaced persons camp after the war in Germany. I don't understand how you plan to take properties away from us and then give it to the government and tenants. And I think that when you do that, you might regret it, because they will not run it as well as we do, nor work as hard as we do, nor take calls in the middle of the night and on holidays to help tenants. And when something goes wrong with tenants, like a break-in, I am there with my tenants. I would like to see the government send a representative in the evening when there's a break-in to stand with tenants. You need to hear from stakeholders before you enact what may have adverse effects for everybody. Just as it will be terrible if tenants are evicted, it will be terrible if landlords lose their property. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you, Speaker. Our next speaker, please state your name and what item you'd like to comment on.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
My name is Elena Talam, and I'm strongly opposing item number 3 and item number 4. I own 2 properties. One is a duplex and another one is a single-family house where I have tenants, and this is my only source of revenue. This is how I support myself and my family. And if we have this order in place that prohibits evicting the tenants, I will lose my income because one of the tenants stopped paying 8 months ago, and 2 more just notified me last week that they're not going to be paying for another 6 months, and that's a drastic loss in my income. I cannot afford to pay rent. I'm not paying the mortgage. I cannot afford to pay property taxes, and if this happens, I'll be devastated. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Speaker. Our next speaker, please state your name and what item you'd like to comment on.
Good morning. My name is Tamara Siminsky. I am a realtor, and I represent rental property owners in the city of LA, mom and pop rental owners. Please reject item 3 on the agenda and continue to work with stakeholders. We need to address the longstanding concerns with the city's rent control and just cause eviction programs together. By permanently expanding the just cause eviction policies to all rental housing units, including single family and condos, it would override the for-cause eviction rules outlined in the state by creating conditions that make it even more difficult for mom and pop owners to make the needed improvements to the property and nearly impossible to remove tenants and those who violate their rental agreements. I have rental property owners, mom and pop owners, who at this time want to sell or permanently take the rental units off the market, which would create more of a shortage. It's basic economics. Supply and demand. When you have very little supply and very high demand, it equals higher costs. These are the unintended consequences, and I implore you to reject item 3 on the agenda. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker, please state your name and what item you would like to comment on.
Good morning. My name is Stefan Medina, and I am an organizer with the Los Angeles Tenants Union. In these difficult times, every Angelino is struggling, and we need to be in this together. I am disappointed to hear so many of the opinions of the landlords at this meeting who, rather than wanting to stand shoulder to shoulder with other Angelinos who rent, insist that the economic burdens should be shouldered singly by tenants. Tenants are out there without jobs, without income, and yet landlords are insisting on their right to throw these people out into the streets in order for them to be able to keep their passive income. Rather than continuing that divisive policy, tenants believe that everybody should be facing the same situation and facing this problem together. The landlords are also saying that the just cause protections will be catastrophic, and yet we have seen decades of success of the same protections in the Los Angeles Rent Stabilization Ordinance. It makes no sense not to extend these same protections to every renter in Los Angeles. As an organizer with the Los Angeles Tenants Union, I have seen every week, multiple times a week, landlords attempt illegal lockouts, mistakenly believing that those lockouts were legal because the building in question was not a multi-unit apartment building, but a single-family home. The city has to be clear to all landlords, whether they own single-family properties or multi-unit properties, that every tenant deserves due process, that every tenant deserves a legal right to shelter amid this crisis, and that all Angelinos need to stand and face this crisis together. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, I believe that clears the public comment queue at this time.
All right, thank you, everybody. Thank you for that public comment. I could see that all of the members of the committee have taken copious notes, and we have received them. I would like to move to items 1 and 2. We're closing public comment, and then move to items 1 and 2. Madam Clerk?
Item number 1 is the mayor's report relative to the appointment of Ms. Ann Sewell as the permanent general manager of the Los Angeles Housing and Community Investment Department. This item has a time limit to file of July 2nd, and Ms. Sewell is joining us in our meeting today.
Ann, welcome back.
Thank you so much.
Great to see you. Very great to see you again. Welcome back. You want to share, and thank you for rejoining us. You want to share some comments and perspectives for us in the committee?
Yes, thank you. I will be brief. Chairman Cedillo and members of the Housing Committee, I'm Ann Sewell, and I'm excited to be here this morning as you consider my confirmation as the General Manager of the Housing and Community Investment Department. The resume in front of you reflects many years as a housing provider, financer, regulator, funder, and advocate. And so this morning, I'd just briefly like to answer the question I get asked a lot, which is why? Why this job? Why now at this point in my career? 30 years ago, I had the honor of serving on the Blue Ribbon Committee that recommended the creation of the Housing Department. I worked in the department briefly, rebuilding after the Northridge earthquake, and since then, I've been an external collaborator, pushing for changes that allow the city to manage its own production pipeline, to face the Great Recession and the elimination of redevelopment, and most recently to jump into the implementation of Proposition HH8. I've seen the terrific work that the department's done in the last 3 years as it launched more supportive housing in those years than it had cumulatively in the last 30. And as it identified system and culture changes needed to improve effectiveness and helped expand tenant protections. There's much success to build on and to be proud of, and much to be done to energetically attack the problems of housing insecurity and homelessness in Los Angeles that have become even more acute in the past months. Even before the pandemic, Los Angeles faced one of the toughest housing problems in the country. Decades of underproduction of affordable housing mean that we are hundreds of thousands of units short of what we needed, and our goals to address our needs in the next 8 years exceed 450,000. We can see the results of this in vulnerable people living on our streets, and in the fact that almost 1/3 of voters earning between $60,000 and $90,000 annually told pollsters a few years ago when we were working on the HH8 campaign that they themselves feared that they or a family member would become homeless within the next 12 months. There's much to be done to streamline development, protect tenants, and secure funding for those that the market cannot serve without help. The challenges before the city and HSID require energy, hard work, and focus. I'm happiest working to address big challenges with the potential for big impact, and I would be honored to serve our city in this way. Thank you.
Colleagues, questions from Mr. Harris-Dawson or Mr. Krikorian?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I want to thank you, Ms. Sewell, for being willing to take the mantle on this very, very important issue. Perhaps there might not be another more important issue in the city at this moment. I recognize that you've been on the front lines for a long, long time, and you've held different positions. By my reckoning, when I met with you, I said, you know, why are you coming directly into the line of fire? The city has a task with regard to housing in front of it that I frankly have not felt like our housing department or the investment that we make in it has been big enough to come close to it, to leading out and achieving. And so I wanted to hear some more about the particularities of what you hope to accomplish in this role over and against things that you've done in the past and even most recently at the California Community Foundation.
Sure. Thank you. Thank you for that. So I think, as I mentioned to you, I'm realizing that working in philanthropy or working in some of the other organizations that I've been in the last 20 years is a lot like being grandparents in many families. You love the kids, you take care of the kids, and at the end of the day, you return the kids to their parents, and you go home and enjoy whatever's on Netflix. Working for the city in this role is like being the parents. You have to stick with it. You put the kids to bed. You deal with homeschooling, whatever is needed to be done these days. And I find that sort of fun and challenging and a good thing to do at this point. So specifically, what I would hope to achieve in the next few years is, well, really, there's three things. The city entered into an agreement about how it approaches accessibility into a legal settlement agreement and a compliance agreement. And that's causing a lot of anguish both within the department and within the department's users, developers, housing providers. And I would want to see that implemented properly or modified or whatever needs to be done, that we are in a state where we, as I keep telling, my family members, there are no unsolvable problems. There are only solutions that you don't like. And we are approaching this as though it was an insolvable problem. It's not. We just have to pick one of the solutions and move forward on that. So that's one of the things. I believe that we need to finish out the implementation of Measure HHH so that, it's actually been a tremendous success, but it's a success that the voters and that, all of us can't see yet. We have so many units in the pipeline. We need to bring those to fruition, finish them, move people into them, celebrate that moment very briefly, because we always knew that 10,000 units were not enough to solve a 50,000 person problem. We need to fix that and move forward on that. And then finally, I really want to address the culture of the department. There are so many really great people there working very, very hard, but it's not clear to outside users that they have been fully empowered to understand how they can say yes to things. We come up with regulations, and the world almost never fully complies with the regulations. So people need to be able, instead of saying no, to say yes, and this is what I need you to do to make that happen. So those would be my first three focal points. I know there are a lot of other sort of sub-points that really need to happen. We have a lot of them on the agenda today, and I would look forward to working on that.
Mr. Krikorian?
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Ms. Sewell. As Mr. Harris-Dawson was anticipated exactly what I was thinking, which is this may very well be, at this moment in time, one of the hardest and most important jobs in the city of Los Angeles right now. And I, having spoken to you before, having looked at your background, having heard your answer to Mr. Harris-Dawson's questions, I can't imagine a better prepared person for this job than you. And I am so excited that you are that hopefully you'll be confirmed for this position and that you're going to be taking over, because I think you're the ideal person for this job at exactly this moment. That being said, I have to ask you the question that comes up often in this committee and often is probably my most frequently asked question when it comes to supportive housing, when it comes to affordable housing, which is what are your thoughts about how we can bring overall costs down so that we can provide more units for people who are dying right now because they don't have housing? It continues to be one of the great outrages to me that at a time when we are so desperate for housing, we're continuing to try to provide greenfield, brand new development of units that come in at $600,000 a unit. And I just, it's an unsustainable path to change, to really bending the arc on providing more affordability and certainly providing enough stock of permanent supportive housing, in my view. And an offshoot of that is the struggle that we've had, of course, has also been to provide a sustained funding source for more affordability in the permanent, in the Affordable Housing Trust Fund and so forth. So do you have thoughts about affordability and both affordability and an ongoing revenue stream that can help support increasing our ability to provide more affordable housing?
Of course, I have thoughts, definitely. So I think the starting point for looking at the cost thing, you know, one of my favorite expressions is it's not emotion, it's just math. We just need information. The starting point for me is to look at what does it cost Joe developer on the street building new apartments just for, you know, the market. Like in the city of LA, what does it cost, you know, my friends at Trammell Crow or whoever to build multifamily units on the market? Because let me go back to your thing about brand new units. For the last 40 years, you know, really for my whole adult life in Los Angeles, we have not been building. We have essentially the same housing stock now at 10 million people in the county as we did at 6 million people. And that's part of the housing crisis that we have. So we must build some, you know, we can't just go out and repurpose. But that's across the board, market, affordable, and supportive. So when I look at the cost of supportive housing, I start with comparing to what it costs to build in the market and then ask, how do we streamline things to reduce those costs? What are we as the city asking? Are we changing our minds too many times about electrical faults and adding costs? Are we taking months and months when we could take, you know, weeks to approve things? What is it? Are we not fully availing ourselves of tools like density increases that have been approved in our supportive housing ordinance, but that we're not encouraging people to actually use? So I think, first of all, figuring out what are the underlying standard costs for everything. And frankly, I don't think they're that far apart. You know, I think to build a vanilla multifamily over 3 stories project right now is probably $400,000. So what's that difference and how are we causing it? And then how do we put our money out in a way that strongly incentivizes people to limit costs? In the final round of HHH, we did the HHH Innovation Challenge, and we asked people, you know, to do it faster, cheaper, and, you know, better. And I have had the opportunity to watch 3 of the developers chosen under that as they got prepared to use a modular development system that was going to be basically identical units across 360 units, no variations allowed. And, you know, ruthless cutting out of unnecessary things was a real part of the process. But it took a lot of thinking and a lot of, you know, debating over those extra 20 square feet in the unit, you know, are they needed for livability or not? So really putting in those incentives that say, you know, you're going to get this funding if you can manage to keep on the tough side of those decisions, I think is part of it. So that's how I would drive the cost down. In terms of how do we come up with more money for affordability, we have some really good tools already. We have the city's transit-oriented communities, you know, ordinance that was created out of JJJ is producing a whole bunch of units. You know, by last look, I think it was, you know, in the 20,000s of units, with 11% of those being deeply, deeply affordable. How do we make sure that we sort of, you know, use affirmative marketing tools and make sure that people in the community actually have an opportunity to apply for those, I think would be one of the things. And then we have other tools like linkage fees that have already been adopted, and, you know, possibly inclusionary other sorts of tools in the future. So it's a difficult time, I think, in terms of the budget, you know, certainly you know that, council member, but I'm, you know, we've been here before. We've been in 2008, 9, 10, 11, 12. It's not that we haven't. Times have not always been as abundant in terms of subsidy as they were with HHH, and we know how to make things happen even when we have tough times.
Very good. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Happy to support the nominee.
Okay, motion by Mr. Krikorian, seconded by the committee confirming to approve the appointment of the mayor, and this will be sent to the council. Madam Clerk, you want to call roll?
Yes, sir. Calling the roll to approve item number 1. Cedillo.
Cedillo, aye.
Krikorian.
Aye.
Harris Dawson.
Enthusiastically, yes.
Thank you.
Congratulations. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Okay, Madam Clerk, you want us to move on to item number 2?
Item number 2 is a mayor's report relative to the appointment of Ms. Loretta Lopez Herndon to the Commission for Community and Family Services. This item has a time limit to file of June 22nd, 2020.
Okay, I want to welcome Ms. Lopez Herndon, and ask for any comments, please. Is she here? Is she with us? Is Ms. Herndon with us? Last call, Ms. Herndon. So she's not with us. I am happy to move this matter on behalf of the mayor. Make a motion to approve the appointment. Second, Mr. Krikorian, thank you so much. Madam Clerk, you want to call the roll?
Yes, Mr. Chair. To approve item number 2, Cedillo.
Cedillo, aye.
Krikorian.
Aye.
Harris Dawson.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, that takes us to items 3 and 4. Madam Clerk, we are prepared to continue those items.
I'll call the roll to continue items 3 and 4. Cedillo.
Cedillo, aye.
Krikorian.
Aye.
Harris
Okay,
Dawson.
that makes sense. So,
yes.
Thank you.
Those items are moved. Now we can move to the consent items 5 through 9, all prepared to be approved. Madam Clerk?
Mr. Chair, is it your wish to approve the CAO report for these items and note and file the HSID report?
It is.
Okay, I'll call the roll. Cedillo.
Cedillo, aye.
Krikorian.
Aye.
Harris Dawson.
Yes.
Thank you.
That commences with items 5 through 9. Is that correct?
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Okay.
I'm sorry, Mr. Chair. Item 9 is a motion.
Yes. I know that. I noted that.
Okay, just wanted to clarify that that item is in fact a motion.
Yes. I think my colleagues are also equally aware, and we can dispense with that as well. I think we're clear in noting 5 to 9. You want us to move through motions for consideration 10 through 13?
Yes, Mr. Chair.
I'd like to recommend that 10 be received and filed.
Second.
Okay, I'll call the roll to receive and file item number 10. Cedillo.
Aye.
Krikorian.
Aye.
Harris Dawson.
This negotiation part.
Yes.
Thank you.
I'd like to call item 11 special. And items 12 and 13 to be approved. I don't believe there are objections, Madam Clerk, to take the roll on items.
To call special number 13, just for a few comments.
Okay.
And, Mr. Chairman, I think it makes sense for me to recuse myself from item 13, despite its great importance and how much I would love to be able to support it. But in the interests of just avoiding any appearance of potential conflict, which there is none, but I still think that I should, at least for now, recuse myself from that item.
Abundance. Okay.
So we will call the roll to vote to approve item number 12 only at this time. Cedillo?
Cedillo, aye.
Krikorian?
Aye.
Harris Dawson?
Yes.
Thank you.
Madam Clerk, I think I want to call item 11 so that we could hear from HSID staff.
Item 11 is a motion by Koretz and Rue relative to amending the eviction defense program to address the impacts due to the COVID-19 pandemic and to include the emergency rental assistance program.
Good afternoon, council members. This is Claudia Monterrosa, Director of Public Policy and Research at the Housing and Community Investment Department. And we are here to provide a really quick overview of the pending eviction defense program and address the motion before us this afternoon. Just for a quick recollection, HCLA has been working diligently on preparing for the approval of this program. The department issued a report with a comprehensive approach to eviction defense on November 11, 2019. And at a special joint meeting held on December 11, 2019, the Housing Committee and the Person and Animal Welfare Committee considered the reports from HCLA, CLA, and the CAO relative to this program. At that point, all reports were adopted and moved forward and referred to the President's Finance Committee. I understand this item has also been waived out of the Budget and Finance Committee earlier this week. What brings us to this motion is the impacts of the COVID-19 pandemic and the related stay-at-home orders. And although the mayor and the governors have both issued moratoriums and the judicial council has not allowed for eviction filings to take place, legal service providers, community organizations, and tenants have reported increased incidents of harassment and illegal lockouts. Additionally, as reported by the LA Times, landlords and some, not all, some unscrupulous landlords have in some cases pressured tenants into signing unreasonable repayment plans or have pressured tenants to be in difficult situations. I also want to point out that a new study by the Turner Center at UC Berkeley estimates that nearly 1 million renter households in the LA metro area are experiencing severe health insecurity due to the COVID-19 crisis, and that the average renter in the LA region will likely spend between 40 to 70% of their total unemployment benefit on rent. This will be further exacerbated when the emergency orders are lifted. And the eviction defense program is a comprehensive approach to having a response.
Excuse me, Claudia. Excuse me, I hate to interrupt you, but can we make sure everyone is muted? We're getting a lot of feedback? Thank you.
Perfect. To ensure that there is a city response that is in place in anticipation of the eviction tsunami that we are expecting. Most recently, throughout the nation, there have been various localities that have already adopted an eviction defense program. And we learned earlier this week that in Colorado, the COVID-19 eviction defense program has done some modeling of the potential tsunami of evictions, and they predict that almost 26 million renters may be at risk of eviction by September. This would undoubtedly impact renters of color, low-income renters, and undocumented renters as the most vulnerable populations. And there is some projections that rental debt could approach $90 billion by 2021. So having the backdrop of the pandemic and already a housing crisis, we are seeking to amend our pending eviction defense program to make that a citywide program in order to be able to have a long-term comprehensive approach for legal assistance. That the main emphasis of the eviction defense program, of course, will be to provide preventive services through a comprehensive approach that includes education and public awareness, eviction prevention interventions, full scope representation of eligible tenants in eviction proceedings, rental assistance. There are two components to the rental assistance program here, an emergency and ongoing. In addition, ongoing support services for tenant stability through our coordination and work with the family source centers, and a significant evaluation and monitoring tool and the creation of an eviction filing system and data collection. These will be items that will have to be in place once the subsidies amounts are exhausted. The city is going to have a response to address all of the related and underlying issues facing tenants in the short and the longer term as we at some point start to recover from the pandemic and the impact to the result of unemployment and other elements, and just the consistent and rising cost of affordable housing. And with that, I'd like to end, and I'm open to have any questions of the committee.
There's a couple questions. I have a question, Claudia, if I may, before we get to the question of sole source. Do we have any data on real time with respect to evictions? So, for example, we all have an incredible concern for the tsunami, but do we have any real statistics in terms of evictions that have taken place during this time period? It seems to me that there's kind of a negative checkmate, if we will, where if a landlord evicts somebody, they're not going to be able to find a tenant because all of us are being impacted by COVID-19. And what they're going to end up with is an empty unit, for which then they'll have to continue paying the mortgage on. And so it seems to be a kind of natural negative checkmate, regardless of what rules or regulations we pass. I know that there was anecdotal comments and observations made in the LA Times early in COVID with respect to very aggressive landlords, but I don't know if that is the norm. I don't know what the circumstances are. It'd be great if we had some real data. So is there real data stats on what's happened last 10 weeks with respect to evictions?
That's an excellent question, and that's something that we have tried to pin down, and unfortunately we don't have access to direct eviction filings. And right now with the moratorium on that, is going to be a little bit more complicated. What I can say is that we did have data prior to this that was general database from the court system that the county of Los Angeles was experiencing about 60,000 evictions on an annual basis before the pandemic. And from information that we have received due to the pandemic, our hotline centers have been riddled with a lot of questions and calls regarding the payment of rents, some complaints from tenants, but there isn't a specific number that I can give you at this point. What I can tell you is that in the city of LA, there's approximately, we can infer on that about 30,000 of those 60,000 evictions that take place in the city of LA. So you can imagine that that number is going to be further exacerbated by the current conditions. And to that effect, in terms of pinning down the number of evictions, we have a pending state legislation right now to work with the courts so that we can have access to that information. And in fact, our eviction filing system is also another tool that we're pursuing. We have that information that we are tracking that by the city. So that will be an ordinance that we will be asked the city council to approve so that we can go ahead and make that a requirement of landlords to file that notice of eviction or notice of to correct. So we are trying to really ascertain the number and to be able to be specific as to how any resources that are allocated to this program are targeted in the right areas of the city. But right now, because of the pandemic, we believe we need to extend this to a citywide program because everybody needs assistance.
Colleagues? Mr. Krikorian?
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Ms. Monterosa, for the report. I think it makes great sense to move forward with this motion. There's a lot that I like about the new approach that we have taken to eviction defense, broadening the range of tools to be used for eviction prevention, I should say, for preventing people from being evicted is important, because I think this conversation kind of started just around legal defense, and that may or may not be the right tool for a particular problem. And Mr. Chairman, you are 100% right when you ask for data, because we just don't have the data to know whether or not that's the right tool for 10% of the evictions or 50% of the evictions or 80% of the evictions. We just don't know. But education and potentially support, the many other things that were mentioned in the report give a range of different options for the city to use to help people avoid losing their homes. And that's our goal. So I think this is a very good step forward. I do just want to caution, though, that the original thought that we collectively had in starting with pilot programs was to be able to fund a piece of this in a robust enough way to be able to try some different things, see what works, see how we can establish efficiency and effectiveness, and then roll it out citywide. I'm not at all adverse to going ahead with a citywide program, but I just have to say now I'm concerned that there won't be enough funding available to do that as effectively as we would like citywide, and we won't have the advantage of gaining the data that the chairman mentioned or the results, if you will, the evaluation of the program evaluation that we would have had from pilot programs. So that's my caution, but I still would like us to go ahead, Mr. Chairman. If you believe we should, I think that it makes sense to advance this now, but just keep an eye on those issues that you raised and the additional issues that I just mentioned.
That's a point well made, Mr. Krikorian. The whole point was to have the pilot so that we could evaluate and build on that. But these are unusual and extraordinary times, and I think the benefits that we anticipate from the program, particularly, as you indicated, the education, the mitigation, not everything needs to be resolved in a courtroom in 3 to 5 years. but actually us putting the resources of the city to bear on this problem may be something that we just may be mandated by the circumstances to go forward with. So I agree with you. Mr. Marquis Harris Dawson, if you want to make a comment, it'll be well received. If not, I'm prepared to. Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Koretz would like to join us. Mr. Bickard, are you available? Is he with us? Mr. Bickard, Jim? Mr. Bickard has left the meeting. I think we're prepared to move forward, Madam Clerk. One question, Claudia, was this question of sole source versus RFP. Is this question of sole source a question of circumstance and a very modest field of people who do this work?
Absolutely. So as the department has reported in the past, we have been working with a coalition of legal service providers and community-based organizations that have the expertise, experience, and practice in this area of work. And to that effect, we have prepared a request for proposals in our adopted report last December that is in council adoption. We would like to take that RFP and have the ability to enter into a sole source contract given the emergency state of affairs in the city of Los Angeles. Because we want to be able to get to the work of preventing evictions and preventing homelessness. So we would work to identify a service provider from that coalition in order to enter into that country. We're working with the city attorney as well as with the mayor's office to get to that, to identify that potential lead contractor that will work with a consortium of providers. So this will not be just one person because this is a comprehensive, one entity. This is a comprehensive program that will require the services and expertise from various organizations that make up this coalition.
Anyone else, Mr. Harris Dawson? Anyone else comment on this? Are you,
hello,
Mr. Harris Dawson?
Councilmember Cedillo?
Yes.
This is Jim.
Mr. Vickar, you rejoined us.
Yeah,
Yes.
I was unable to unmute originally, and then I got disconnected.
I understand.
It does seem to happen.
Big finger, big hands.
Yeah. Thank you for letting me speak today on behalf of Councilmember Koretz.
Yes.
And thank you for placing this item on today's agenda. There's been a little confusion as to the purpose of this motion, and I won't go on very long to try to straighten that out. But the basic existence of this motion stems from, as Ms. Monterosa pointed out, a switch in the proposed mode of doing the initial contracting for a vendor for the launch of this program that has taken place since the December 11th meeting when you originally approved the reports. And HCID very specifically asked if we would do a motion to enable them to work on doing a sole source contract instead of a piggyback contract with the county. They would work on this sole source contract, identify a vendor, and then and they would work with the city attorney on the proposed contract and then bring that all back to the council for final approval. So this motion is in no way intended to bypass that process. The other purpose of this motion, apart from making sure that the coronavirus is taken into account in the reports for the program, is that you may recall when the council president and Councilmember Wesson proposed the emergency rental assistance program a couple of months ago, and it has now been approved by the council, they originally asked that it be made a part of the eviction defense program. They have subsequently rethought that request, and so HCID asked that we include in this motion, or we amend this motion to explicitly delete that request from the motion, which the motion that Mr. Koretz made to effectuate that. So with your indulgence, I would like to offer an amended version of the moving clause for today's item that accomplishes that. I have submitted it to your staff, Councilmember Cedillo, and also to the CLA. I haven't had a chance to do it, send it to the clerk, but I can read it into the record, or I can just submit it electronically if you'd like.
Mr. Krivorian, what's your pleasure on this?
Well, I think in order for the public to hear it and for Mr. Harris Dawson and I to hear it, we should probably hear it out loud.
Mr. Bickhart, proceed, please.
Okay, it's not very long. I therefore move that the City Council instruct the Housing and Community Investment Department, HCID LA, to prepare an amendment to the Eviction Defense Program, Council File 180610, to give HCID LA the authority to negotiate a sole source contract to implement pre-eviction legal eviction prevention, rental subsidy, and other specified services by public providers in conjunction, public and nonprofit providers in conjunction with the city, amend the eviction defense program to become a citywide program to address the severe impacts due to the COVID-19 pandemic and make other necessary amendments in response to the current and post-COVID-19 emergency for presentation to the City Council for approval. That's it.
Sarah Dawson? Elena, you're good with this?
Concur.
So I'm ready to, Madam Clerk, I'm ready to move a motion to approve the as amended.
Okay. Calling the roll to approve item number 11 as amended. Cedillo.
Cedillo, aye.
Krikorian.
Aye.
Harris Dawson.
Aye.
Thank you.
Yes.
Madam Clerk, I think we're prepared to go to item 13. Mr. Harris Dawson has requested that we address this matter.
Yes, Mr. Chair. Item 13 is a motion.
Thank you so much.
I'm sorry, Mr. Harris Dawson. I was just going to read it out loud.
No, please proceed.
Item 13 is a motion by Harris Dawson, Bonin, Westland, and Cedillo relative to the development of a COVID-19 displacement fund to implement a mom-and-pop mortgage assistance program.
Thank you so much. And thank you, Mr. Chair, for allowing me a few moments to make some comments about this motion. I just wanted to point out that this motion was the product of some of the best community and neighborhood organizing that I've seen in a long time. The Coalition of Small Rental Property Owners, small mom and pops. In fairness, I will say it's mostly mom homeowners or apartment owners, not so much pop in this group, but really a great group organized by Diane Robertson. Brought again, African-American women who own apartment buildings in South LA and beyond, and for whom this is a part of their livelihood, one, and two, They are a very important part of the fabric of our neighborhood because they're involved in their housing. And so it might be called passive income, but they don't deal with their property in passive ways. And so they're very involved in the well-being of their tenants and the well-being of the neighborhood. And so we tried to put together this fund and this program to respond to what Congresswoman Maxine Waters put forward in Washington, which creates a fund for small landlords. Make sure the city was ready to receive those resources and put them into this program. I'm reminded of how many young families, including my wife and I, start off in a small apartment owned by somebody in the community. We stay there long enough, we save up, we can buy a house and be homeowners ourselves, and eventually maybe invest and provide other folks. And so that's the spirit and the energy behind this motion. Again, I want to thank the coalition for helping us put together, as well as Mr. Bond and Mr. Price and Mr. Weapon. Thank you so much, Mr. Chair.
Thank you for your leadership on this matter. I couldn't agree with you more. There's also a significant community of the immigrant community, and including the undocumented community, where this is also where they begin with a duplex, a triplex, a fourplex, et cetera. And so this is a very critical piece of housing in Los Angeles. I would also note, too, the leadership of Congresswoman Maxine Waters, as well as my Congressman, Jimmy Gomez, who's in the same committee, serves with her, under her leadership. And so we look forward and anticipate their progress in terms of moving
just one additional comment, Mr. Chair, if you will. One of the things I appreciated about this group, and I want to say this on the record, and I want to make sure people who are listening hear this. These apartment owners came to us not saying, our tenants aren't paying us, we want to kick them out. Their position was, we don't want to kick our tenants out, but we need a way to pay our bills. And so can you all come up with something that helps us do that? Because it doesn't help us to have a evicted tenant and an empty apartment and tear apart the fabric that we've helped build. What helps us is if we can have a mitigation to help us get through this period. And so we're very, very excited about what can be accomplished here.
Madam Clerk, I think we're prepared to go forward. Item 13.
Calling the roll to approve item 13. Cedillo.
Cedillo, aye.
Mr. Krikorian has recused himself. Harris-Johnson.
Yes.
Thank you.
Where are we now? Item 14. That takes us to item 14, I believe. Madam Clerk, you want to present that to us?
Yes, Mr. Chair. Item 14 is a motion from Cedillo and Krikorian, and also a report from the Los Angeles Housing and Community Investment Department to report relative to the use of funds for the Permanent Local Housing Allocation Plan Program.
Hi, good afternoon again, council members. This is Claudia Monterrosa from HCLA, and before you, we have the proposed allocation plans for SB2, which is a permanent housing program from the state. In 2017, Governor Brown signed SB2, Building Homes and Jobs Act, which established a $75 recording fee on real estate documents to increase the supply of affordable homes in California. This revenue is to generate revenue is generated from the recording fee and is to be distributed to local jurisdictions by the California Department of Housing through this new program called the Permanent Local Housing Allocation Program. So there are two separate program types under this funding source. And the good thing, and what I would like to really say, is that this city was in support of this program for over 10 years. It did take 10 years to get to this point. And so now we have at the state level a permanent source of funding that's based on this recordation fee. The formula is based on the CDBG Community Development Block Grant funding from HUD. And larger jurisdictions are supposed to and are to receive a direct allocation based on that formula. So based on that formula, the allocation to the City of Los Angeles to the City of Los Angeles for this current fiscal year, 1920, is $26,219,573. In order to receive this funding, Los Angeles must submit an application and submit a 5-year expenditure plan to the Housing and Community Department before July 27, 2020. The expenditure plan must include the percentage of funds allocated for each eligible activity and cannot be amended by more than 10% within the 5-year period without additional approvals from HCD. Before I go into the authorities, I would like to just provide a little bit of an overview of how we are proposing to expend these funds. The recommended formula allocation for the proposed eligible activities, which include the development and rehabilitation and preservation of rental housing that is affordable to extremely low, very low, low income, and moderate income households. For the development and acquisition and rehabilitation and preservation of affordable rental and ownership housing, including accessory dwelling units that meet the needs of a growing workforce, earning up to 150% of the median income. Assisting persons who are experiencing or are at risk of homelessness, including but not limited to providing rapid rehousing, rental assistance, supportive services, management services that allow people to obtain and retain housing, and home ownership opportunities, including but not limited to down payment assistance. What we have done here is taken the HCLA is recommending that the allocated funds be used for eligible activities as I have outlined, that strengthen several program areas to preserve and increase the city's affordable housing stock. HCID believes that the housing goals identified via the broad and very substantial stakeholder process conducted in support of the affordable housing linkage fee during 2018 and 19 can serve as the foundation and the guiding post for this allocation plan. Further, the distribution of these funds are in alignment with the council-approved affordable housing linkage fee expenditure plan that would allow to leverage both sources of funding. So the proposed allocation plan before you is based on one of the 3 tiers that was adopted by City Council. You may recall that there were a 3-tier system that was approved for the affordable housing linkage fee. Each tier was triggered by certain amounts of funding that was achieved by the revenue obtained from the linkage fee. So tier 1 is up to $10 million. Tier 2 is more than $10 million, and tier 3 is above $50 million. So we've utilized that tier system to help us prepare the allocation plan for the first year and for the estimate for 5 years. I do also want to state that the 5-year estimate, as announced in the NOFA of the state, is approximately $131 million over the course of 5 years. I do want to caution that these are amounts that were released earlier this year before the COVID pandemic took place. So we do expect to have an impact on that potential new income on an annual basis, but that is yet to be determined, and we'll find out from the state budget allocation later this year. So for the first year, we are proposing the several categories, including a 5% allowance for administrative requests, administrative funding requests. So the total amount is $26.2 million. Out of that, we are proposing to allocate 44.4% to rental new construction, 21.9% to rental preservation, 19.9% for the moderate income program assistance program, 5% for the eviction protection payment assistance. This is, if approved, will become part of the eviction defense program. And there is a new proposed percentage of $3.8 million for the ADU accelerator program. So based on those percentages, the 5-year allocation plan, as outlined in our report, lists those same percentages across a 5-year period of time. And please note that we can change up to 10% per item over the course of the next 5 years. Anything above 10% between these proposed categories will trigger a public an amendment that we will need to come to you and then present that amendment to the state. So, how we're the programs that we have outlined here include infusing additional much-needed funding to the managed pipeline that will continue to leverage the trust fund amount as well as the linkage fee dollars that are going to go into the trust fund. There is a significant allocation for rental preservation that will also leverage the linkage fee dollars and forthcoming funding for that particular program. There is approximately $5.2 million that is being allocated, proposed allocation for the homeownership program for the moderate income program assistance purchase program that would allow to serve up to 70 households to obtain homeownership. And we would dedicate about $1.3 million for the eviction defense program, rental assistance to prevent evictions and prevent new instances of homelessness, and of course the accelerator program. That is, so now I would like to go into the record and read the recommendations as outlined into the report. Recommendations: that the mayor review the transmittal and forward it to the city council for further action. The city council, subject to the approval of the mayor, approve the proposed grant activities as recommended by the general manager of HCLA on behalf of the city of Los Angeles. Authorize the general manager of HCLA or designee to sign on behalf of the city of Los Angeles as an applicant as determined by the Permanent Local Housing Allocation Program as per the attached city resolution. Authorize the general manager of HCLA or designee to lead the coordination, partnership, and engagement in the development of the required allocation requirements, including the development of a 5-year allocation plan detailing eligible activities and prioritization of PLHA funds for housing-related projects and programs that assist in addressing the city's unmet housing needs. Authorize the general manager of HCLA or designee to lead the coordination, partnership, and execution of the required standard agreement, annual progress report, or any related documents in accordance with the PLHA grant requirements. Authorize the general manager of HCLA or designee to accept PLHA grant funds on behalf of the city of Los Angeles totaling $26,219,573 million for the 2020 allocation year, and an estimated 5-year formula allocation amount of $131,997,864 million listed in the Notice of Funding Availability NOFA released by the state in 2020. Authorize the general manager of HCLA or designee to develop and issue a request for proposals to complete necessary studies for eligible project delivery activities and recommend consultants for city council approval as necessary. Authorize the city clerk to place on the agenda on the first regular council meeting on July 1st, 2020, or shortly thereafter, the following instruction. Authorize the city controller to establish a new interest-bearing fund entitled SB2 Permanent Local Housing for the receipt and disbursement of the SB2 grant from the State of California Department of Housing and Community Development to be administered by HCLA. Establish new accounts and appropriate funds upon receipt of the grant from HCD as follows. Account number 43T244, Administration Reserve, $1.255423 million. Account number 43T723, Rental New Construction, $11,397,187 million. Apologies for that. Account number 43T724, Rental Preservation, $5,706,378. 43T726, Homeownership MIPA Program, $4,175,315 million. 43T919, Eviction Prevention Rental Assistance, $1.265153 million. 43T920, ADU Accelerator Program, $1 million. 43T143, Housing and Community Investment, $786,644. 43T299, Reimbursement of General Fund Costs, $433,460. And account 43T900, Contract Programming for Systems Upgrades, $200,000, with a total of $26,219,573 million. And number 3, increase appropriations in the amount of $786,644,000 in the following account within Fund 100/43. Account number 001010, $646,473. 002120, Printing and Binding, $3,500. 003040, Contractual Services, $10,000. 006010, Office and Administrative, $29,700. 006030, Leasing, $96,971, with a total of $786,644. H, direct the General Manager of ACID-LA to designate a report back on the acceptance of funds upon award. The report back shall include but not be limited to the following recommended administrative and distribution of funds: implementation of eligible activities and program delivery timelines for the successful coordination process and completion of SB2 PLHA grant-funded projects and programs. And we're almost there. Authorize the attached resolution Appendix E as required by the state for entitlement local or governments in order to submit the final application for the SB2 PLHA program. Authorize the General Manager of ACID-LA or designee to prepare control instructions and any special technical adjustments consistent with the Mayor and City Council actions related to this matter, subject to the approval of the City Administrative Officer, and request the Controller to implement these instructions. And before I end, I'd like to note that we will require some technical changes in some of the funding amounts. And I would like to defer to Sarah Wall from our Housing and Development Bureau before HCID concludes its presentation.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Sarah Wall. I'm a Community Housing Program Manager from HCID-LA. And we wanted to make a technical amendment. Today, actually, the Department of Housing and Community Development released a new 2020 income scale and guidelines. So the moderate income definition serving the MIPA program will be between 81 and 150% of area median income, starting with one person at $81,150. Furthermore, the program allocation for the MIPA program is $5,217,695, or 19.9%, and that will serve 70 households in the next round. That's all.
Thank you, Sarah. And that concludes our report, and we are available for any questions from the committee members.
Mr. Krikorian? Mr. Harris-Dawson?
I think even with all that, I think I'm still good.
Mr. Harris-Dawson?
Also good.
So we do have a question about the ADU Accelerator Program.
Yes, council member, and I will have, is Helmi Hisaric on the phone?
Yep.
Yes, I'm here. Perfect. I'm going to hand it over to Helmi, our Director of Land Development.
Good afternoon. Is there a question, or would you like me to tell you just about the program in general?
Yeah, why don't this hasn't been vetted by council yet, so why don't you just give us an overview of the program, what we're going to buy, what we get for $1 million.
Okay, great. Thank you. Yes, it has not been before council, although we are preparing to come before council with a full explanation of the program or the proposal. Just by way of background, as I'm sure you're very well aware, accessory dwelling units through both actions taken by state law and by the City Council in the adoption of an ADU ordinance have spurred the development of accessory dwelling units. In the last 3 years, there's been over 16,000 accessory dwelling units permitted in the City of Los Angeles. And the average number of permits has been about 5,500, which compares to prior years of less than 200 per year. So there's a rapid growth in accessory dwelling units. The mayor's office received $1 million grant from the Bloomberg Foundation to implement an ADU accelerator. They initiated this by creating a website that really simplifies and provides comprehensive information to anyone interested in putting a accessory dwelling unit on their property, and that website is adu.lacity.org. They also specifically were looking at how to ensure that accessory dwelling units could be used to serve at-risk of homelessness population. And so in 2018, HCID began to work with the mayor's office with a specific goal of creating housing for at-risk population in the accessory dwelling unit program. We looked at various approaches, including construction loan programs and other incentives, but made the decision to focus initially on providing support to ADU owners or folks that already had accessory dwelling units and matching them to low-income seniors. The mayor's office negotiated an agreement with the Affordable Living for the Aging, which is an LA-based nonprofit that's been providing roommate matching services to low-income seniors since 1978. In November of 2019, the mayor's office launched an online RFP to accessory dwelling unit owners in Los Angeles, offering grants of up to $30,000 to provide affordable housing for low-income seniors. All of the funding for that has come from Bloomberg Philanthropies and the Mayor's Fund. About 50 accessory dwelling unit owners responded to that call. HCID staff worked with the mayor's office to interview property owners and identify owners who had properties that were suitable ADUs for housing elders, such as proximity to services, layout of the property, and accessibility. In February of 2020, everything was put on hold in terms of the tenancies due to COVID-19, and at this point, no grants have been made to tenants and no tenants have moved into ADUs through this program. HCID is in the process of preparing an RFP to solicit a service provider to provide these types of services. We anticipate this RFP in October of this year, and will be coming to council with a full recommendation for that program. I would also suggest that there was ongoing analysis about the best way for the city to participate in the ADU work. We think, there's a lot of market-based activity on accessory dwelling units, and so our focus will be on how do we link affordable housing, how do we link the ADUs to affordability and serving tenants, particularly those who are at risk of homelessness.
Colleagues? Mr. Krikorian? Mr. Harris-Dawson? Tell me, that's a wonderful report.
I yield my time.
I'd love for you to share that with the council, and so just let me hear you say that we're going to make sure that we get a report from you guys to the council so that they can appreciate what we're kicking off with the ADUs. Those are very impressive numbers, and I'm very excited about them. And I think, we may have an entire city of ADUs if we do this right, and it may be a more thoughtful way to address some of those specific concerns, particularly senior housing, and some of the other concerns that we focused on. So thank you for that. And don't forget, hold a second. So my staff just wants to hear that we have your commitment to come back and report to the council.
Oh, absolutely. We've already got the report in draft, and we're circulating it for comment. So we're looking forward to coming to council with that proposal.
Okay. I appreciate that. I look forward to it. Madam Clerk, so I think we're positioned to motion to approve and to request a CAO report as well.
Second.
Okay, I will call the roll to request item number 14 approve item number 14 as amended and request the CAO report. Is that correct, Mr. Chair?
Correct.
Okay, Cedillo,
Aye.
Krikorian,
Aye.
Harris-Dawson.
Yes.
Thank you.
That's great. That brings us to item 15. We've got the con plan in front of us. You want to present that to us, Madam Clerk?
Item 15 is the mayor's report and the chief legislative analyst 2 report relative to the 46th program year of the Los Angeles Housing and Community Investment Department Consolidated Plan 2020.
Can't look at that.
Good afternoon, council members. Chris Espinosa from the Office of the Chief Legislative Analyst. Today I'm joined by Brian Randall from the CLA and also with Housing and Community Investment Development Department, AGM. Now before you is the 46th year Housing and Community Development Plan. And on March 17th, 2020, the Mayor's Office released the plan, which covers the Community Development Block Grant, Home Investment Partnership, Emergency Solutions Grant, Housing and Opportunities with AIDS. Based on the federal entitlement program income, the Mayor's Office had a budget that would allocate a total of $143 million, which would go to public services of $15 million, economic development projects at $12 million, housing and related programs at $63 million, neighborhood improvements of $32 million, and administrative and planning of $19 million, for a total 46 program year budget of $143 million. Now, on May 22nd, just about a few weeks ago, as part of our process, we meet with council offices to get their feedback. And then we also work with HCID to run their numbers to make sure that all the budget, from the time the mayor releases his budget to the time the council adopts it, we ask that they run numbers. And when they did, they found that their program income had dropped. And generally, program income would, the drop would come from HCID monitored loans. And what that essentially means is that there's certain deferred loan payments and a reduction in refinancing. And so overall income is down, and it caused a deficit in the amount of $7,050,786. Once we found that out, then we're in the position of trying to do budget reduction exercises. And so our staff worked very closely with HCID to try to figure out what's the best way to reduce this budget to preserve council priorities. And so if you look at one of our attachments, and it would be attachment G, looks like this. It'll give you a quick summary of what we've tried to do. And so what we've done is we didn't want to, so there's no reductions in the public services category, housing and related programs, except for one item, and as well as administrative and planning. Didn't want to cut that. There's no reductions to the economic development program delivery, LA Business Source Program, Bureau of Contract Administration Prevailing Wage Labor Compliance, and Neighborhood Facility Improvement Program, because we wanted to avoid negative impacts to service delivery and city staff resources. We're recommending that we delete the Small Business Relief Microloan Program, $2.5 million, and the REAP Rehabilitation Loan Pilot Program at $500,000, as these initiatives qualify for the Coronavirus Relief Fund or supplemental COVID-19 CDBG funding. And then what we did was to try to be as equitable as possible. We applied an approximate 11.5% reduction to all remaining programs listed under economic development and neighborhood improvement categories. And that's the way we were able to achieve the $7 million reduction. Now, council members may wish to look at additional options to make up for certain programs that were not funded within the PY46 plan. And those items that you might look at are the SEDS Incentive Zone Commercial District Program. After the 11.5% cut, there's 1.3 million, or about 50% of that might be available or more if the council wishes to move around those funds. We also looked at 2 additional new neighborhood improvement projects. The One Generation Senior Enrichment Center, that's a new project. It would probably start design first, so might not need all the construction money yet. So there might be an ability to reduce that project further. The Sepulveda Rec Center in Council District 6 is also a new project. It's going to start design work, and then later on move on to construction. That might be an area. However, those aren't recommended in our report at this time. There's an issue of timeliness. We do expect a significant amount of reprogramming because of the COVID-19 workflow. It's very likely that construction schedules will be delayed somewhat, and that staff activity might be delayed. So you might see reprogramming opportunities, and we recommend within this report that those projects that receive the 11% cut would be the first ones to receive reprogrammed dollars at the mid-year. We also wanted to mention that the reserve fund loan, HCID is requesting a $10 million reserve fund loan, but on March 19, 2020, the mayor instructed all city departments to the extent possible repay all outstanding reserve fund loans. HCID has always done so, and they don't believe it's going to be a problem. However, because of the 2021 fiscal year, we'll will begin with a lower reserve fund balance than in prior years. It is recommended that the CAO work with HCID on cash flow issues and determine whether a reserve fund loan is necessary this year. That will bring us to the Federal CARES Act. As you know, the CARES Act had significant funding for the Community Development Block Grant Program. In CDBG funding, there's $31 million allocated to the city. HUD also is going to provide $16.1 million for the Emergency Solutions Grant and $3 million approximately for the HOPWA program. We are recommending that those, the whole COVID-19 CDBG allocations be handled by the Ad Hoc Committee on COVID-19 Recovery and Neighborhood Investment pursuant to council policy. There are some changes that we did in the report to make sure and address council priorities. And so certain projects got included, including that we moved Destination Crenshaw, that we moved that money to become an economic development initiative and to provide small business technical assistance. The Chavez Community Garden in Council District 1, we are allocating an adjusted budget and moving it from the People's College of Law roof replacement project for design costs for the Chavez Community Garden. The Herbert Humphrey Park improvements, there's an adjusted dollar amount there that would also help pay for project design funds for the Roger Jessup improvement project and for some Pacoima street lighting project. And then there's an adjustment to the Pio Pico Library and an adjusted amount would also assist with the Freedom Moore Multi-Purpose Center. I just wanted to let the council members know as well that because the report was just released last night, I will need to be reading in the recommendations into the record. It will take a significant amount of time, about 3 minutes, but it's a lot of information. And so at the end of your questions and at the end of the, after I receive instructions from you, then I would ask for your patience as I read 22 recommendations into the record. Thank you.
Colleagues, Mr. Krikorian.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Mr. Espinoza, to you and your staff. This is a trying challenge, needless to say, and you've done really a terrific job of trying to ensure that the really important community building projects that we fund through the CON plan are preserved to the greatest degree possible in the most trying of economic times. So thank you for that. And thank you also for the information about the SEDS program. And Mr. Chairman, if this is an appropriate time, I'd like to move that the committee amend the CLA's attachment G to reallocate the sum of $1,327,695 that funds SEDS, incentive zone for commercial districts, to instead fund the JEDI zone facade improvement program as specified in the 46th year CON plan program.
Second. Mr. Harris-Dawson? Madam Clerk, with that amendment, we're prepared to go forward. Is that correct?
We actually have to allow Mr. Chris Espinoza to read the recommendations from the CLA into the record.
Okay, Mr. Espinoza, please go forward.
And sir, I would ask for your patience. It's going to take me a little bit, about 3 minutes, so please, thank you.
Make like one of those disclaimers on a political commercial or insurance commercial on the radio.
I am. I'm going to speed read. Please forgive me.
Sure.
Recommendations that the council, subject to the approval of the mayor, 1, find that the 2021-46 program year Housing and Community Development Consolidated Plan, PY46 Con Plan, Action Plan will not have a significant effect on the environment pursuant to the city's CEQA guidelines and in compliance with California Environmental Quality Act of 1970, that the notice of exemption reflects the independent judgment of the lead agency of the City of Los Angeles, but the documents constituting the record of proceedings in this matter are located in the council file in the custody of the city clerk and acknowledge the notice of exemption for the PY46 Con Plan to be submitted by the Housing and Community Investment Department, HCID, and attached to the council file. All new federally funded projects are subject to environmental review under the requirements of the National Environmental Policy Act, NEPA, and pursuant to the U.S. Housing and Urban Development, HUD regulations, prior to the commitment of federal funds for expenditure unless they are exempt from such review. HCID has determined that some action is programmatically exempt per Code of Federal Regulations, CFR 58.34, and categorically excluded per CFR 58.35A and B from the annual environmental requirement. Commitment of funding for new projects that could result in direct or indirect physical change to the environment are also subject to the environmental review under the California Environmental Quality Act if implementation of the projects is authorized as part of the budgeting process. HCID has determined that some action is programmatically exempt annually under CEQA guidelines for general exemptions. Article 18, statutory exemptions, Section 15260 through 15285, and Article 19, categorical exemptions, Section 15300 through 15333. Those projects that are not exempted or not yet defined are approved subject to 1, confirmation that the project to be funded is categorically excluded under NEPA pursuant to 24 CFR Part 58 and exempt under CEQA pursuant to the guidelines prior to project implementation, or 2, appropriate environmental review prior to the project implementation. All projects involving new construction and or rehabilitation will require the preparation of a mitigated negative declaration, environmental assessment, and finding of no significant impact or environmental impact report, environmental impact statement on a site-by-site basis. 2, approve the PY46 Comp Plan and related budgets for the Community Development Block Grant, Home Program, ESG Program, and HOPWA Program grant included as Attachment A to this report. 3, authorize the General Manager of HCID or designee to sign on behalf of the city the application for federal assistance for the CDBG, Home, HOPWA, and ESG programs and the associated grantee certification subject to the review and approval of the city attorney as to form. 4, authorize the General Manager of HCID or designee to submit the annual 2021 PY46 Action Plan to HUD after council and mayoral approval and public comment period ends. 5, instruct the General Manager, HCID, or designee to A, provide written notification to PY46 Comp Plan applicants as follows. 1, to successful applicants, advising them of final award recommendations and required contract processes to facilitate program implementation. 2, to unsuccessful applicants, informing them that they are not recommended for award, and further advising them of current and forthcoming alternative competitive application processes. And 3, for all categories, notify all departments that have requested CDBG funding, the relevant council offices and city attorney of these correspondences. B, monitor public services and administrative services expenditures against the PY46 statutory spending limitations, respectively, and report to the mayor and council within 30 days with recommendations for necessary adjustments in the event it is anticipated that either cap will be exceeded. C, prepare with the assistance of the Economic Workforce Development Department or the CRA-LA quarterly reports for submission to the mayor and council on program income receipts for all Comp Plan sources. D, prepare controller instructions and or make technical adjustments that may be required and are consistent with the intent of the PY46 Comp Plan actions upon approval of the CLA and request the controller to implement these instructions. 6, Instruct HCID with the assistance of the CAO, CLA to ensure that PY46 projects recommended for funding are in compliance with the city's CDBG expenditure policy and guidelines. Council File 01-2765-S2 to establish a multi-year future projects priority funding list and to revise the current CDBG expenditure policy to comply with the aforementioned multi-year funding list for future program years. 7A, authorize the city controller to process a reserve fund loan for up to $10 million to be available July 1st, 2020 or soon thereafter for the period of July 1st, 2020 to October 31st, 2020 for cash flow purposes related to the Complan grant. CDBG, ESG, Home, HOPWA with said loan to be fully reimbursed from grant receipts in PY 2021 and subject to the availability of reserve funds for this purpose. B, instruct the CAO to work with HCID on cash flow issues to minimize the need for a reserve fund loan. 8, approve the reprogramming of $3,015,504 in HOPWA prior year savings as a source of revenue for the PY46 action plan budget. 9, authorize the general managers or their designees of the program implementing departments to negotiate and execute contracts, contract amendments, and or interdepartmental agreements as needed with the grant recipients as identified and listed in the attached contract authorities and consistent with council action an amount not to exceed that set forth in revenues and allocations as attached to this report in consultation with HCID as grant administrator and in substantial conformance with the pro forma agreements for public service activities or construction as provided in Council File 06-2366, subject to the city attorney review and approval as to form and review and approval by the Public Works Bureau of Contract Administration as to compliance with the city's contract requirements. 10, instruct all departments involved receiving CDBG funds to submit billing and reimbursement documentation on a quarterly basis to HCID and to continue to work with CLA, CAO to identify salary and expense savings throughout the fiscal year and transfer those savings to the general fund to compensate for unrecovered related costs. 11, instruct the HCID with the assistance of the CLA, CAO to meet with all departments with active CDBG projects on an as-needed basis to determine if additional savings can be realized and if such savings are found, direct HCID with the assistance of the CLA to report to council with recommendations for new expenditures of these funds. 12, instruct HCID to provide the CLA with a quarterly report at minimum of the CDBG timeliness ratio and CDBG balances and notify the CLA immediately should the city be at risk for missing the timeliness test. 13, that find that work can be performed more economically or feasibly by independent contractors than by city employees and in accordance with Charter Section 1022, approve the use of the contractors listed in the contract authorities as attached to this report. 14, instruct the HCID general manager or designee with the assistance of the CLA, CAO to report within 30 days of council and mayor's approval of the PY46 comp plan and analysis recommendations and any necessary additional implementing language for related authorities and administrative actions. 15, instruct HCID to report with an update on program income receipts for CDBG and home grants on an as-needed basis and to identify other sources of funds that may be leveraged to address any potential need for administrative costs. 16, approve the attached updated CDBG future vested and priority projects list, attachment E, which adds the following project: Community Garden and CD1, the Martin Luther King Jr. Boulevard street lighting and CD9. Instruct the HCID to consider the following projects for future reprogramming opportunities subject to the determination of eligibility. All neighborhood improvement projects subject to the approximate 11.5% reduction, Martin Luther King Jr. street lighting at CD9 and the Elysian Valley lighting project phases 3 through 7, CD13. Instruct the Economic Development and Workforce Department to report within 30 days on 1, the number of clients served, outreach efforts, jobs created, program outcomes for the Grid 110, Los Angeles Clean Tech Incubator, Reboot LA Sabio Enterprises Incubator, and CLA Food Business Incubator, and 2, an update of the Los Angeles Clean Tech Incubator's efforts to reduce and eventually eliminate its CDBG amount starting in PY46 and future program years thereafter. Council File 18-0106. Almost done. Instruct the EWDD issue a request for proposals for the proposed CD8 Small Business Technical Assistance Project. 20, instruct HCID to issue requests for proposal for the following programs as described in the contract authorities as attached to this report, and report to the City Council with the recommended award systems for various programs: information technology, urgent repair, program construction services, and real estate information services. 21, instruct HCID to prepare any additional contract authorities, controller instructions, and or any other documents necessary to meet HUD deadlines, and instruct the CLA to submit these documents to the City Council for approval. 22, recognize that 2344.44 general fund reimbursement to the letter of credit to resolve HUD findings regarding previous CDBG projects as revenue, subject to the mayor and council's approval of the general fund appropriation in the 2021 budget process, Council File 17-1392-S1. And then finally, there is recommendation number 23, which was presented by Councilmember Krikorian, that I move that the committee amend the Chief Legislative Analyst report relative to the 46th program year of the Los Angeles Housing and Community Investment Consolidated Plan, CF 19-1204, and item 15 on today's agenda, to accomplish the following: reallocate $1,327,695 from line item number 36 in the Mayor's Economic Development Budget that funds said to fund the Jedi Zone Facade Improvement Program as specified in the 46-year comp plan program. And that's it. Thank you so much, sir. Appreciate your patience.
Mr. Espinoza, you got a bright future in reading political ads, disclaimers. Let me ask our clerk if we're ready to receive a motion to approve as amended on the con plan, the 46th program year.
Yes, Mr. Chair.
So moved, Mr. Chair. Now that Mr. Espinoza cleared all that up.
Yeah.
So, Mr. Chair, we are going to vote to approve the recommendations as read by the CLA and amended by Councilmember Krikorian, as well as receive and file the two mayor's reports.
That is correct.
Okay. Cedillo?
Cedillo, aye.
Krikorian?
Aye.
Harris Dawson? Harris Dawson? Councilmember Harris Dawson? Would you like to proceed with the two votes, Mr. Chair? Oh, there he is. Councilmember Harris Dawson? He's given us the finger for a yes. Okay.
Let's rephrase that he's given us the thumb.
Thumbs up for a yes.
He's given us the thumbs up on the motion. The internationally acknowledged approval of the motion.
Okay, that's 3 votes, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Madam Chair, does that clear our file?
Yes, we have no more items before us.
Motion to adjourn is in order. Move to adjourn. Have a second?
Second.
Okay, there we have the internationally acknowledged second and peace sign. Everyone, thank you for joining us this afternoon. Good afternoon, and as we like to say, go forward and serve the city, lead the city during these times of change, tumult, and progress. Thank you so much, everybody. Have a great afternoon.
Thank you very much, everyone. Have a good day.